everybody? It is Matt Camp. This is the Wrestling Matt. Welcome in. Welcome in on a Friday. If you're catching it live, thank you for being a Matt member. Matt members, of course, catching this one live at 11 a.m. Eastern. Everybody else catching this at 1 p.m. Eastern, whether you are getting it right here at thewrestlingmatchshow.com or if you're listening via podcast on the Believe Network. Thank you so much for doing so. If you're not yet, for free, you can subscribe to the podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. You can subscribe wherever, of course, you want to. Well, you know where you go for subscription here. It's on YouTube. So come on over to the YouTube page at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Make sure you subscribe. And you're going, hey, wait a minute, I can get this earlier. If you are a member, guess what? You get a lot of members-only perks, and that includes getting some of the live tapings of this show. We're typically live at 1 p.m. Eastern every single weekday, but you can definitely catch the show, whether it's live or pre-recorded at 1 p.m. Eastern every single weekday. But if you're a Matt member, you get stuff like this. We're here with you live at 11 a.m. Eastern on a Friday. I'll be taking your questions throughout the show. Not a full-on AMA episode, but certainly it's not a real heavy day in terms of news. So if you guys have questions about anything, feel free to hit me up in the chat here as you're watching live. Put those comments in down below if you're watching the show after we have gone live. You watch it days after the fact. Want to hear from you today. What's up to Nerdy Dude? What's up to Franklin in the chat already? And here's what we're going to talk about today. 4 years of the Bloodline. 4 years ago today, it was at Clash of the Champions, or Clash of Champions, whatever the hell they rebranded it. Roman beat Jey Uso. And, Jey would, in the next couple of weeks and months, fall in line, as we know, with Roman Reigns. And that is the beginnings, the real beginnings of the Bloodline. So 4 years of the Bloodline. And I asked this question, because I looked at the announced SmackDown card for tonight. Is Roman Reigns more important than ever to WWE? And I say that also in a way of, does he have more leverage than he's ever had before? I throw that out to all of you. I throw that out as a question that I wondered about, because I look ahead at SmackDown tonight. We're going to get into the full, in quotes, I would say, preview. It's not a super big show. It's far from it. And they all can't be big. I understand that. It's weekly television. You're doing it every week of the year pretty much. But I look and I see no Cody. I see no Roman. I see them promoting the return of Solo Sikoa, who was gone for a whole week. And I get it. You promote everything as big as you possibly can. He wasn't there. He's the head of the table or the tribal chief or the current bloodline, whatever the hell they're saying it is. He make a big deal that he wasn't there last week, and now he's back. Andrade and Mello, they're going to match 6. Piper and Michin, ahead of the dumpster match next week, which I am looking forward to. Naomi Bailey, number 1 contender for Nia at Bad Blood. That's what's announced. That's the show. That's why I kind of thought about the Roman part of it. I would also say, does any of the things I just said feel big? I've said this about SmackDown a little bit more so as of late. The top of the card is massive. Cody and Roman is a huge deal. They're the top 2 stars in the company. But it does feel like a very top-heavy show. Or maybe I should say bottom-heavy show. Maybe it is more bottom-heavy where the top guys are few and far between. So we'll get into that. More Mr. McMahon Netflix documentary Fallout. We did do for members. Some of you know this already. A full-on reaction, and for those that heard it, I think I was very honest about everything. We did a part 1, episodes 1 through 3 reaction to the Mr. McMahon Netflix documentary for the members. That is available if you did miss it. We'll be doing part 2 next week. But we'll talk a little bit more about the general fallout and what people are saying about it. Also, I want to talk about MVP's AEW debut. I know yesterday we talked about me being at Grand Slam and all that. We did not get to MVP. The debut, confronting Prince Nana, talking about how Nana is to blame for Swerve's recent losses and situations. what can MVP and likely others bring to AEW that they don't have right now? I'll give you a hint. It is something I have talked about that I feel like AEW doesn't have enough of. It also relates to a veteran wrestler who I put over in a very big way yesterday, who stands out above just about everybody else. So all that is part of the show today. Get some of your comments here. Nerdy Dude says, I would say to some extent Roman is more important because he's still the powerhouse of the Bloodline. Yes. If you say Bloodline, you don't think of any of the current members first. You think of Roman Reigns. Just how it is. Everything that has happened with them is still somehow connected back to Roman Reigns. Obviously now it's in the forefront. Solo taking over the group, still getting Roman chants, and that's what they want. But the group will never do anything on their own. That's like, it will always come back to Roman. There will not be some break off of some kind after this part of the feud is over. That's not going to happen. Either the Bloodline ends or comes back under the control of Roman, or he starts his own and he dispatches of everybody else, or they all fall in line, but there will not be two paths that get taken by the current iteration of the Bloodline and Roman Reigns. Those paths will always intersect. They'll run parallel, and when they need to, as they're doing now, they'll intersect. But they'll always be connected. I don't know what the end game is. Does The Rock get back involved? And people have thrown that out there. Where does this go? The expectation, I think, for all of us has been that the Bloodline will go to Survivor Series and be in the War Games match. And, it was a matter of, okay, what's Roman's team going to look like? Could he get Brock? Could he get Jey Uso? Could he get Cody? Could he get Sammy back? Do you bring back the original Bloodline of Cody, Roman? Of Roman, Jimmy, Jay, and Sammy. It doesn't feel like that's even in play now anymore. A lot would have to happen, not in a short period of time. There's enough time. There's 2 months. We are right now about 2 months out from War Games at Survivor Series. It feels like Jay's on his own. He's on his own path. Maybe that changes. Like I said, we still got, not that he's on the pay-per-view, we still have Bad Blood. There's still a Saudi show. Still plenty of television. How does WWE also, think about this. They're going to have Saturday night's main event to break up December because War Games is at the end of November this year. And once again, they're going no pay-per-view in December. No main roster one. How do they heat things up in is what typically the quietest month of the year for them, December? Because you got to heat things up heading into Netflix. I mean, that's a given. It doesn't feel like they went super duper big for the USA debut. Not as big as I would have expected. But Netflix feels like it's a much bigger deal. What does the roster look like? I guess there's been reports that there is no draft in play. You don't need a full draft. You can have trades. You can do all kinds of stuff. The nice thing, and I don't want to say they don't utilize it enough, but I think they could utilize it more. You got 2 GMs running the shows. You got GMs that have done deals before and have made free agent signings. I am a big fan of the idea of contracts. It's in the news anyway, right? People are talking about what's going on with Phoenix today, and those reports are all over the place. He signed with WWE, AEW's. I am not addressing it because it feels like it ain't even worth it. But contracts are part of wrestling. Contracts are a part of sports. I think that's an easy storyline. You can go to it any time because it's not like people know, and they're not real anyway. Well, his Raw contract is up soon. His SmackDown, you can play that up anytime you want. If they need to adjust the rosters, they could go to those kind of things. They could go to trades. Cody had to make a deal. Well, what was the deal? Well, Jay went to Raw and Kevin Owens went to SmackDown. They have that. So if they need to adjust, and they may, as we get into SmackDown talk, they may. When does that happen? What does December look like? How do you load up that Netflix first show? As it was mentioned, Rumble's into February this year, I guess. Is that true? Franklin, is that true on the date? Royal Rumble 2025 is in December? February? Holy hell. All right, February 1st. You're right. I forgot. So there you go. You don't have a December pay-per-view main roster, but you got Saturday night's main event, which is the first of the specials that are part of this new deal. So that'll be significant. You have Netflix. I would think that first Netflix show could be pay-per-view level. Because once again, you don't have a main roster pay-per-view from 2 days after American Thanksgiving at the end of November all the way until February. That is nuts. That's a long time. 2 months. 2 months. No pay-per-view. Which, listen, I'm sure part of it is strategic. Okay, Saturday night's main event will be our big show in December. Our Netflix debut, our Netflix month could be huge as we lead into the Royal Rumble and then go full bore into WrestleMania season. How does that connect to what's going on with the rosters right now? If you announced, I would expect a massive match announced for that first Netflix show. I'm banking on it. I don't know if that's Roman Cody 3. I don't know if that's Rock Cody. I don't know if that's a Cena match. That's all. I mean, they have so much to go to. And as I've been talking about since before he came back, Roman's return is going to bring big business as a babyface. And I saw he got announced for 6 dates between now and Survivor Series. So he's obviously going to – that's Roman on 6 dates in the span of 2 months is a busy schedule for him compared to where he was at. And by the way, for anybody who complains about that, don't complain to him. That's what was negotiated. That's his deal. Good for him. And I always come back. I never liked when people ripped on that because I don't know. Like the one part I don't think that gets brought up enough is, what kind of recovery he still needs to have. As he said, he's taking medication for the rest of his life for leukemia. So if it's better for his health to not be on the road as much and not make as many appearances, number one, good. Number two, as I've always said, it makes him more special. However, and let's tie this all in now, you can have Roman be on the Roman schedule, be a massive draw, now being able on the other side being a massive baby face and all the money that's going to make, but you still need to build up the rest of the card. You got to build up the rest of the roster. Now, look, Cody's there and Cody's been there. I don't think there's been anything unbelievable about Cody's first reign. I think he is the quarterback, as he calls himself. He's QB1. He's managing the game. But I don't think it's a total shock that things really didn't pick up in terms of him coming back into the spotlight or being in a spotlight in a bigger way until Roman was potentially coming back at SummerSlam, then did come back, and now setting up this tag match. Why wasn't more built up underneath? Why do you look at the show tonight and go, all right, where's our heels for Cody? Okay, it's the Bloodline. I get that. But he's done that already. Who's facing Cody Rhodes? I said it last week. The most interesting part of all of this is Kevin Owens. Kevin has been through this with the Bloodline longer than anybody and can't escape it. And if they want to play into that, they absolutely should. If this drives him mad, and now seeing someone who has been his friend, someone who he asked his friends to look out for when he left WWE, to come back to WWE, to back Cody multiple times in an effort to stop the Bloodline, only for Cody to win the championship. And 6 months later, 5 months later, now be tagging with the guy who made WWE his personal empire at the cost of everyone else. If you just lay it out like that, Kevin Owens would be 100% justified in being pissed off at the situation. Would it justify him attacking Cody Rhodes? That's when you go into heel territory. But I don't think there, and I will give WWE a lot of credit here. There is no need to rush anything with Kevin, and it doesn't, most importantly, it doesn't have to rush to physicality with Kevin and Cody. I think it actually connects more to do it verbally. For Kevin to express disappointment in Cody. I thought you were different. I didn't think you would do what the rest of them do. How do you not have a long memory? You grew up in this business. Do you have a plan? Do you have a plan if Roman is only out there for himself? These are the questions that Kevin can ask tonight on the show. These are the questions that should continue to come up. It's not about going to physicality. It's not about it. I want a almost downtrodden, distraught, inquisitive Kevin Owens. Because I think it's one of those where, like, hey, if you yell everything, you know, it all gets mixed up. If Kevin was very chill, hey, I know I can fly off the handle, Cody. I'm not going to do that. I've spent enough anger up on these guys and Roman Reigns over the last 4 years. What are you doing? How could you possibly stand side by side with that guy? Is this about ego? Because you made it clear last week on the football field where that guy played that you're the man and you're the champion. And you are. You are that guy. You don't have anything to prove to Roman Reigns. You don't have to take up his cause. So why are you doing it? I want that interaction with Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes. I don't need yelling, screaming, angry Kevin Owens. I don't need him attacking Cody. I want him to look his friend in the eye and ask, what's going on in your brain? Isn't being WWE champion tough enough? Now you're taking up for Roman Reigns? Why? What does that do for you? What does that do for the company? If you're the face of this place, and you are, why are you protecting that guy? And Kevin would be completely justified in saying those things. And Cody might give him some speech of, you're right. Cody's good at admitting, hey, this is probably not the smartest thing to do. Do I have an ego? Yes. Do I feel that I need to put this version of the bloodline down and this is how I'm going to have to do it? Yes. And unfortunately, that's the man I need to stand next to. That's the man I need to battle because he knows them. He knows what it takes. And I, most importantly, Kevin, knows what it takes to beat Roman. And I'd rather keep him closer than let him go out there on his own and get taken out by them. And then what do? How do they grow stronger? They need to be eradicated or this is all going to happen again. And maybe that is wrong. And maybe when we take them down, Roman will immediately punch me in the face. I know that could happen. I'm ready for that to happen. And if he wants this after it's all said and done, that's what being a champion is. Then I'll take on that challenge because I've beaten him before and I can do it again. And that's where I would leave it tonight. Now, if they follow it up on that, Kevin's still trying to plead with him. Kevin wondering, what makes you so sure you could do it again? You were the only guy to do it in 4 years. Who knows what Roman could have up his sleeve? Who knows what kind of lengths he'll go to get back a championship that gave him the power over this entire place? What makes you so sure you can do it? And Cody can say, I have done it. Why are you questioning me? You never did it. And that's where you get the gasp from the crowd. Kevin wondering if Cody knows what he's taking on again. And Cody going, I know what I'm taking on. I have gotten the job done before. I did it on the biggest stage of them all. But I had to be that guy because no one else could, including you. And maybe, Kevin, because of that, you should trust me. And you should trust that I know what I'm doing. And that's where I would leave that. And you could do that for a couple of weeks. You could do that tonight. You could take that into next Friday. Because it's the night before Bad Blood. And then you leave that hanging, heading into Bad Blood. And you wonder, is Kevin going to get involved? If it becomes a 4-on-2 situation, which it very likely could, does Kevin get involved? Does Kevin get involved to protect Cody? But as a result, he's also protecting Roman. And now you have Kevin remaining as the barometer of logic. Because he's been through all of this. He's a heat check for Cody. But you know his history and how volatile he can be. And as they even detailed going into the match when Kevin and Cody faced off in Berlin, hey, he turns on his friends. And Kevin said, other than the stuff with Kofi in the New Day, everything else I wouldn't regret. It was deserved. And Cody could say something to the effect of, who's to say I don't deserve it? Look who I am tagging with your mortal enemy of the last 4 years. And Kevin can go, maybe you're right, but maybe I've matured. Maybe I've gotten older and I've understood that you don't have a lot of friends in this business, so I'll stand by your side. And by the way, I'll stand by your side at War Games. I'm not standing by Roman's side. I'm standing by your side. Just tell him to get out of my way. And that's how you get Kevin on that War Games team. But the tension remains. The tension remains between Cody and Kevin. The tension will always be there between Kevin and Roman. The tension will always be there between Cody and Roman. Do they get Jimmy on that team? Now, to me, that's a good story to tell. That's a story that will carry the show. That's a story that when you announce Roman for 6 dates between now and Survivor Series, you know people have something to really sink their teeth into. You also have, and I just told some all of that stuff, not even including what they could do at Saudi. What does that match look like? Is that Jacob Fatu and Roman? Is it Cody, Kevin 2? We will see. Is it Cody, Jacob? There's a lot of meat on that bone. But my point is that there needs to be. Because if I look at SmackDown tonight, okay? These are not bad segments. Far from it. They're not bad feuds. Far from it. They just don't feel like they have a lot of juice to them. Piper and Meechin is obviously carrying on because we're going to get Meechin and Chelsea Green inside in the dumpster match next week. I think that's going to be a fantastic spectacle. I'm looking forward to it. Legitimately, it's a reason I would tune into the show next week. Because I think, A, Meechin knows what she's doing in those spots and how to handle plunder and all that stuff. And Chelsea is such a great performer. I think they're going to have I know they have good chemistry. I think they're going to have a very entertaining match and get a lot out of that match. And they're both going to work their ass off. And they both take big bumps. So it's a mini feud. But to me, the winner of that feud, you could probably say is next in line after whoever faces Nia at Bad Blood. And then we have Naomi and Bayley #1 contender because of the double pin next week. Babyface, they're both friends. We've already seen Bayley and Nia. Do we want to go to Naomi? I don't. Naomi feels like she's right back in the same spot she was at before she left the company. And I'm not saying it's a bad spot. It just seems like it's the same spot. It doesn't feel like that big of a deal. Nerdy Dude, New Age Outlaws versus Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie in female form. That's what I expect, Matt. Yes. One of my favorite TV matches and an outstanding sell of an angle when they put them in the dumpster. Well, I guess the dumpster match technically happened at WrestleMania because they used the wrong dumpster and then they did the cage match the next night. But they used the dumpster on Raw to set up the cage match. But yes, I would agree. Something like that. But just as you bring that up, the dumpster angle they did with the Outlaws and Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie, where if you remember during that time, they had a loose affiliation with DX, the Hunter Sean China version, heading into WrestleMania 14. And they kind of pushed them into doing that. And then they trap them in there because Cactus and Chainsaw Charlie were having a match. And they put them in there and they pushed the dumpster off the stage. And they sold that so well to get the Outlaws over as despicable heels, which obviously didn't even last that long because they were too entertaining. But the way those two guys, after they did it, were like, oh my God, what did we do? But it was, no. And then they kind of settled in, and that's what we did. But they sold it on commentary so well with JR and King and Cactus. And you could hear Terry Funk trying to talk to Mick. And then they had, I love that dumpster match. And I remember, they used the wrong dumpster. It was backstage. And then they did the rematch, and they lost, and that was the new beginning of DX. And, that's also, as people may or may not remember, when Cactus and Chainsaw get destroyed by what becomes the longest-running version of DX with the Outlaws and X-Pac and Chyna and Triple H, they chant for Austin that night. And that is the impetus for Mick's heel turn into Dude Love. Because on a night where he's getting destroyed, all the people wanted was Stone Cold Steve Austin. What a great run of booking there to elevate the Outlaws. Just think about that, where wins and losses are. They elevate the Outlaws by getting them involved with two beloved wrestlers, Chainsaw Charlie, Terry Funk, and Cactus Jack McFoley. And by dumping them into that dumpster and throwing off the side of the stage, all of a sudden they've done something that is bigger than anything else they've ever done before. So despicable, so shitty, and sold correctly on commentary. Sold with the commentary, with the ambulance, with those guys, like all of that. You could do that very same angle, and those guys could be back a week later. If you're like, oh my goodness, they got dumped off the stage, we'll get some medical help for them. But coming up next, like that, you could go in that direction. I have seen angles get thrown away, or a big attack or angle, and they don't sell it as big. Man, they made that a big deal. Scott said, I remember that dumpster segment took up a whole hour of Raw, and that wasn't a bad thing. But yeah, from the match to everything, and they sold it big. What did these guys do? Shawn Michaels and Triple H have been in their ears and blah, 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 and look where it got them. And then they do the tag title match. And then they get the legends, the baby faces, get a measure of revenge. And they win the titles at WrestleMania. Only for the next night to put the Outlaws on an even higher level by taking another massive beatdown and rechristening DX with Triple H as the leader and X-Pac showing up in the company coming over from the NWO. And the Outlaws are now fully fledged members of DX and their tag team champions, and here we go. There is a great example of taking something in the mid-card and elevating it to a bigger level. Where could that happen in the current landscape of SmackDown? What needs to get pushed to a different level? Who needs to get pushed up a little bit more? Who needs the shove? Who is next up in the main event scene? And I don't have that answer. Is it Andrade? Is it Mello? Is it LA Knight back into the main event scene? Remaining in the main event scene? Who are they going to go with? Who's moving up the card? I don't know. I honestly don't know. If Andrade and Mello go 7 and one of them wins, somebody was the better wrestler. What comes out of that, though? That's a key. Are they having great matches? Yes. Do you care about either guy? Mello last week, because they did Andrade and LA Knight in the middle of this whole series, which is has been and hasn't been a series, and then, now they're addressing it as a series. He dropped his, put the fries in the bag, bro. Because you lost to LA Knight, because you're down 3-2. Like, that's, he's beating you. And I would agree, Franklin. I see you're saying that Melo and Knight would have an excellent feud. I think they'd have a solid feud. I just want to know where that, I'm very much, where does it go? I mean, I would think Melo's going to win the series just based on the fact that Andrade and LA Knight already had their match for the U.S. title. It just feels like other people need to step up. Maybe, you know what? And I think he's going to win the title on Tuesday night. Maybe there's now a wide open door for Trick here on SmackDown. I think he's going to beat Ethan Page. I'll tell you what I would do. I'd bring Ethan Page to SmackDown. I have never, not never, that's a lie. That's hyperbole. I'm not going to do that here. It is rare, let's say it that way, to have someone walk into WWE immediately, without having much fanfare, without having a big reputation. Not Taylor Swift. And walk in like he owns the place and get people to believe it. That's what Ethan Page has done. I cannot praise him enough to walk into the biggest company in the world and look completely comfortable from the jump without having this big resume of extended pushes, consistent TV time. He did good work in AEW. Looked like he was going to do some more good work in Ring of Honor. But Ethan Page has walked into NXT. And yes, I've said this plenty. It's developmental. He's got more experience than everybody there pretty much. He does stand out for that reason. However, I think he's gone beyond that. I have watched him, just the way he carries himself. There is not an ounce of hesitation in what he does. There is not an ounce of confusion of who he is. He is aware of that, and he projects that onto everybody else. He handles himself very well as a heel champion. He's better on the mic, but it reminds me of Bobby Roode. Now, Bobby Roode had way more experience than Ethan Page when he showed up in NXT. I am well aware of that, and he had championship experience, and he rubbed elbows with a lot of great workers in TNA and stood his ground with everybody and, had that, to me, Bobby Roode was always DiBiase and Rick Rude put together. That's Bobby Roode. Solid enough promo, always better as a heel, but there was a presence about him that, especially in that era of NXT, stood out. It was different. Bobby could always work. Bobby's a hell of a worker. He's a great heel worker. I liked Bobby as TNA champ. I liked him as NXT champ. He's never going to be your guy because he's a heel, and he's always going to be the one who he's the type of heel that puts obstacles in the way. He's a Flair heel. He's an MJF heel. They're all cut from the same, those characters are all similar, and hey, you're below me. I'm the champ. I'm the moneymaker. I dress good. I look good. I'm above all of this. You're going to have to jump through hoops to get to me. I'm going to take my shots. And you could always have a heel like that. DiBiase, Bobby Roode, MJF. Just the idea of, I'm up here, you're all down, you're peons. Bobby Heenan would treat the fans like that. He didn't dress like that, but he would treat the fans like that. I'm from Beverly Hills, California. That just very simple, I'm rich, I'm better than you. And I think Ethan Page carries that kind of demeanor, that kind of presence. And when he does, I think, lose to Trick on Tuesday, it's him getting his comeuppance. It's a big win for Trick. I mean, it's set up that way. I would be genuinely surprised if Trick doesn't win. It's the first night on the new network. You want to have a nice, happy image going off the air, a happy moment on the show. You're doing in Chicago. Punk will raise his hand. It's a restart of sorts for Trick. I can't say I loved how they got there. I thought he should have had to do a little bit more soul searching. I didn't like him dancing with Joe Hendry. But it's a crowning moment. And then I kind of wonder what's left for Ethan Page in NXT. Because there's probably not much. And I think he is so good and has such a good presence that I think the door would be wide open for him on SmackDown to walk through and ascend up the card. There's probably a real good Ethan Page LA Knight feud out there. I think Ethan Page and Cody could be great foils for each other. And I think based on what I've seen from Ethan Page, I watched him do some media yesterday. Super comfortable. Knows what to do. Will not talk himself into any trouble. Can navigate being in character as much as you can be in those interviews. Talking about, hey, here's why I left AEW. Still having those, but being able to control the conversation. And there's a ton of value in that. And I have said NXT needs those veterans. There's no doubt about that. But you know what? I wouldn't want them, and I wouldn't want somebody to miss their opportunity, to miss a golden opportunity. And I think it would be more important that if Ethan Page were to lose on Tuesday night, to ride what he's got going right now and get him on SmackDown and let him swim. Let's see what this guy can do. He's done everything we've asked. He's helped us get Trick Williams over more. I think he deserves more, and I think there is quite a gap between Cody and Roman and the main event story and everything else on NXT. And everything else on SmackDown. Ethan Page might be able to step into that very quickly and make waves. A couple of your comments here. I want to get to those. Let's see. Nerdy dude, I was already a big fan of Ethan Page, and I heard Chris Van Vliet interview last week, and I liked him even more. Yeah. Once again, comes across very confident. And there is something about Ethan that, went through early, old Ring of Honor and toiled on the indies and, dealt with body issues and got himself into far better shape and, working in, being a Canadian and trying to secure ways to get into different countries, especially America, to wrestle is tough. And he promoted his own stuff, which I also think is something that gives you more of a well-rounded appreciation of and what you have to do to make it in the business. Went to TNA, tagged with Josh Alexander. They had whatever happened, why they fell out or broke up, and, got his way into AEW. And, that was big. That got him a visa. And, I don't think was handled correctly. The stuff with the firm and all that with MJF and Stokely and some of that went wrong, and he would go out there and perform well, and then it just didn't work, and he stepped right in, and I think has shown how valuable he can be and how hungry he is, and we're seeing that each and every week. He feels like one of those guys. And I know there are people on the writing staff that listen to this, and if they'd love to reach out to me, I'd love to hear this answer. He feels like one of those guys, when you tell him what to do, you're not worried about it. Hey, here's what you have tonight. No problem. I got it. You leave it to me. Promo, match, whatever it might be, angle. he does feel like someone who's like, yeah, I got it, no problem. Hits his times, all that stuff. It's a writer, it's a booker's dream. That person's going to do exactly what I need. It's going to do it in the time allotted. It's going to accomplish what we need to accomplish. It's going to do it at a high level. Thank you, sir. Franklin says, Ethan feels like he's on the main roster. When he's on the main roster, he immediately will be a mid-card champion. Yeah, I could see that. Scott got it. With Raw going to 2 hours for the rest of the year, I wonder if it's worth it for some Raw talent to wind up on SmackDown. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. I think that will happen. Scott says, I feel like Drew should go to SmackDown after this Punk feud. Could see him and LA Knight having a feud. That's not bad. I like that. I think you got to make sure that elevates LA Knight. Nerdy dude, what if Roxanne and Julia end the show? They could end the show. I don't think they will, because I don't think Julia's going to win. I could be wrong about that. But I think the biggest star in NXT that should get that moment is Trick. Without a doubt. There's no doubt in my mind he should get that moment. The other person I would think about, because it very much feels like they're doing the Rocky story with Tony D'Angelo, is I think Obafemi could be up sooner rather than later. And there's another spot potentially on SmackDown. Franklin, true. I don't know how you have Punk and Drew on the same show after Bad Blood. That's a great call. Yeah, that's a very good call. Drew to SmackDown probably makes sense. Punk. If Punk went to SmackDown, he could end up on that War Games team. And then there's probably a heel turn somewhere. Because that's the other thing. Punk is a draw. Punk is a moneymaker. Punk is a bona fide main eventer. We all know that. Punk and Roman and Punk and Cody are big feuds. It doesn't feel like we're close to getting to either one of them. I wouldn't want to miss the boat on that. But, there's been no Punk Roman interaction. And Punk Cody is a handful of times. Scott just said, I think Punk and Rollins have to be on the same show till we get that match. I don't feel like it's as big as it was, not to say that they can't heat it up. The follow-ups for both Drew and Punk will be interesting. We were talking about Mariah May yesterday and how tough it's been to follow up what's been a year-long feud that she won. And now has to go out on her own, and now the paths separate with her and Toni Storm. And being able to follow that up. What will be next for Drew and Punk? The winner, I think, will stick around on television. The loser probably goes away for a bit. I would think Punk's going to win the feud. I think probably Punk needs to win the feud more. Drew can get any of the heat back he needs. A babyface doesn't lose a feud like that. Especially not his first one back. Let's talk about MVP and AEW. I read enough of the tea leaves in conversations and reading the right people say the right things on Twitter that made me believe that Bobby Lashley would be coming into AEW. Don't know that for sure. But Wednesday's events with MVP coming out to question Swerve Strickland. The managing of Swerve Strickland, as Prince Nana was out there to give an update. And MVP was in straight up Hurt Business MVP form. The idea that Prince Nana has caused and has not been able to give Swerve the proper managerial expertise is an interesting way to basically put Nana on his toes. You got the guy. I know how good Swerve is. How did you let that happen? He was the AEW World Champion a month ago. Now he's not the champion. He had his house burned down. And then he had his head caved in, and you end up letting him get in there with a man who put a syringe through his mouth. What are you doing? Business card. So I think you have MVP probably vying for the services of Swerve Strickland. And a babyface Swerve Strickland should rebuff those advances. And MVP brings in Bobby Lashley, and we get Swerve and Bobby Lashley. That feels like where it's going. Bobby Lashley could come in by himself with MVP. Do you do a new version of the Hurt Business with another veteran like a Shelton Benjamin? Cedric's elsewhere. You could. But to me, Bobby Lashley brings something to AEW that they don't have a lot of. Big guys. It's just not a big man company. Big men are not pushed very strongly in that company. Lance Archer. Giant dude. Stood next to him the other day. What a presence about him. Big Bill. Towers over everybody else. Consistent, though, now. And doing some great work and getting over. I didn't get to talk about that yesterday. Big Bill is over. Big Bill was over in the UK, and that's continuing. There's going to be a breakout for him from Jericho. There should be no rush, but there will be. Nerdy just brought up Wardlow. Apparently he's hurt. So he's out of the mix. He's had his ups and downs. Powerhouse Hobbs has had his ups and downs. Saw him the other day. What a giant human being he is. Holy hell. And then potentially Bobby Lashley. I like having my baby face conquer mountains, conquer big challenges. It's not always about being the better wrestler. It's about dealing with the obstacles that get put in your way. It's about battling from underneath. You need big guys to handle those roles. Bobby Lashley comes with a great resume, and people in that company don't look like he does. There's not a lot of those. Why I said yesterday how impressive Billy Gunn at his age or any age looks in person. And like I said, you don't want a whole company of that. You want people who look different and are different body types and sizes and backgrounds and how they speak and what you want everybody to be different. I just think AEW could use more big guys. And use more big guys in big spots. It mixes up the talent a little bit more. WWE has more guys that are similar to Bobby Lashley. So maybe that's part of why he became expendable to them. AEW doesn't have that. Bobby Lashley is different than what AEW has. That's a good thing. MVP talking for Bobby Lashley is a good thing. That was a good pairing. I always felt that Bobby Lashley can get over with the crowd, and did. There were instances when he wasn't champion. Bobby would have like these runs where he'd get super big reactions for weeks or months at a time, but it would go up and down for whatever reason. Presentation, how he was aligned, babyface, heel, whatever. But there were times where I was like, ooh, there's something here with Bobby. I loved his entrance. I thought they made that so, and that's a past regime. The Bobby Lashley entrance was impressive and made him look impressive. I don't think it's fair to just go, oh, they're bringing more WWE guys in with their... No, that's a generic argument. Bobby Lashley is different than what AEW has. I don't want 10 Bobby Lashleys or similar to that coming in, but I do think Bobby is different than what AEW has. And I think he'd be willing to sink his teeth in. Nerdy said, what is Satnam Singh doing, Matt? I know he's not the best in ring, but if you present him right, he could be huge, pun intended. He's a special attraction. You'll see him Saturday. You'll see him tomorrow night on Collision. Because Jeff's in that lumberjack strap match with Hangman. I don't think Satnam will ever be a regular player, and I don't think he's supposed to be. Franklin says, Lashley with MVP as mouthpiece is great. I've always found his personality boring and bland. I don't think Bobby's boring. I think it's about getting the right stuff out of him. Dennis says, I didn't really want MVP to come in initially, but loved his segment. I think that Lashley really fits a needed role if he comes in. Yeah. I think having big guys or someone like Bobby and people who know Bobby, and I think Bobby's going to have a bunch of new people to work with. I think it can work. And remember, this is a presentation that goes back to TNA. With Joe and Kenny and the Beatdown Clan. Like, this is a proven winner. And I think it could be a winner again. I appreciate everybody who's been with us today. For the members, thank you for being with us live. For everybody else, thank you for watching in our normal time slot of 1 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for listening in podcast form. If you have not done so yet, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to our friends at the Believe Network. Rate, review, subscribe. Subscribe to the WrestlingMatchShow.com. You can do that for free and become a member. You wanted to hear this live at 11 a.m. Eastern? You would have if you're a member. Coming up Monday, normal show, 1 p.m. Eastern, and we are watching Raw on Monday night for members at the Matt Camper and Matt event level. So we got more coming next week. We'll also be doing part 2. Not sure what day yet or time. I'll have that for you guys soon. Part 2 for members of my reaction to episodes 4 through 6 of the Mr. McMahon Netflix docuseries. If you missed last night for the members, you can go back and watch it. If you'd like to become a member, go to the WrestlingMatchShow.com, hit the join button down below. Go over to the members page, and when you become a member, you can go back and watch past member-only videos. But we'll be doing part 2 of the Mr. McMahon Netflix documentary next week, so be on the lookout for that. We're going to be watching Raw next week. I think we'll have an AMA announcement next week at some point. So plenty more to come here as we come towards the end of September and getting into October. And with that being said, you can also catch me this Saturday and Sunday from 9 to noon Eastern on Busted Open Radio. Excited to be back with my friends there at Busted Open Radio, hosting both shows this weekend. So come check me out there, and I will be back on Monday to talk about wrestling even more. Hey, also, ProWrestlingTees.com/TheWrestlingMat. Get your Wrestling Mat merch. I'll be back on Monday to talk about wrestling even more right here on TheWrestlingMatShow.com.